This map of the Indian state of Manipur shows the geographic reality driving its internal divisions. The Meitei majority makes up 53% of the population, but they are concentrated in the central Imphal Valley, which accounts for just 10% of the land. Meanwhile, the Kuki-Zo and Naga tribal communities make up 40% of the population and inhabit the vast surrounding hills that cover the remaining 90% of the state. That 10% is highly coveted. The Imphal Valley is a lush, fertile basin, contrasting sharply with the rugged, heavily forested terrain of the surrounding high altitudes. To protect the indigenous tribes, Article 371C of the Indian Constitution and the 1960 Land Reforms Act established a strict legal barrier. These laws prohibit non-tribal people, including the majority Meitei, from purchasing land or settling in the hill districts. Over the decades, the state government poured almost all of its development funding into the valley. Imphal received the vast majority of infrastructure, hospitals, and schools, leaving the hill districts marginalized and difficult to access. This rigid separation bred deep mutual paranoia. The Meitei people felt geographically trapped and economically confined to a shrinking valley, while the hill tribes feared that any shift in the political balance would result in a massive land grab by the dominant majority. On April 14, 2023, the Manipur High Court issued an order recommending that the Meitei community be granted scheduled tribe status, a specific affirmative action classification under Indian law. For the hill tribes, this recommendation crossed a red line. Gaining scheduled tribe status would dismantle the constitutional barrier, allowing the wealthier, politically dominant Meitei to legally purchase protected land in the hills. Faster, more urgent tone. On May 3rd, tribal students organized peaceful solidarity marches to protest the ruling. In response, Meitei groups organized counter-blockades. Tensions instantly snapped, and physical clashes erupted along the borders of the valley and hill districts. Within days, the violence consumed the state. Mobs torched entire neighborhoods, forcing Kukis to flee the valley and Meiteis to evacuate the hills. The result was a complete, highly militarized ethnic partition of Manipur. A single judicial recommendation regarding affirmative action broke through decades of fragile boundaries, igniting a devastating territorial conflict. As the violence spread, state security dissolved. Mobs stormed police stations and armories across the state, walking away with over 6,000 firearms and hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition. These weapons flowed to organized Meitei militias, most notably Karanbai Tangol. Armed with state artillery, these militias led systematic, heavily coordinated raids on tribal villages. The role of local law enforcement immediately came under intense scrutiny. Chief Minister N. Biren Singh became the center of a national scandal following the release of a series of audio recordings, which became known as the Manipur tapes. In these leaked conversations, a voice matching the chief minister allegedly claims credit for orchestrating attacks against Kuki villages and admits to actively shielding Meitei militias from police intervention. The evidence of armory looting and the leaked recordings point to a state apparatus that patronized and protected the very groups responsible for the violence. During these attacks, mobs employed severe gender-based violence. In one widely documented incident from May 2023, 2 Kuki women were stripped and paraded naked before being sexually assaulted, while local police reportedly stood by and did nothing. Researchers analyzing the conflict identify these assaults as a deliberate method of ethnic subjugation. By targeting women, both physically and symbolically, these attacks serve to dismantle the social and cultural identity of the entire community. The destruction forced more than 60,000 citizens to flee their homes. They sought shelter in overcrowded, unsanitary relief camps, surviving with minimal food, clean water, or medical assistance from the state government. With state infrastructure paralyzed, local citizens stepped into the void. Women's groups, such as the Maripaibi in the valley and Kuki-Zo networks in the hills, organized supply chains and provided essential community defense. When the formal institutions responsible for public safety collapsed, the survival of tens of thousands of displaced people fell entirely on the shoulders of these citizen-led networks. By August 2023, the scale of the crisis forced the Supreme Court of India to intervene. The justices explicitly declared that Manipur had suffered an absolute breakdown of constitutional machinery. To bypass local corruption, the court seized control of the investigative process. They installed independent monitors, transferred sexual assault cases to federal investigators, and ordered forensic audits to verify the chief minister's leaked audio tapes. In response, the state government worked to suppress information. Authorities enforced an internet blackout that lasted over 200 days and filed criminal charges against journalists and civil society activists attempting to document the abuses. Today, despite the arrival of thousands of heavily armed central military troops, civilian militias continue to operate, and the hard borders separating the communities remain heavily guarded. A massive troop presence can freeze a conflict, but it cannot resolve it. To achieve lasting stability, the state must disarm the militias, distribute resources equitably, and ensure that the officials who protected the violence face real accountability.